Welcome back to Classic Radio Drama Theater. In this episode, we present a quartet of captivating tales, each plunging you into a world of mystery, suspense, and hidden truths. We'll unravel a puzzling disappearance, venture into a shadowy realm of spiritualism, explore a web of deceit and desperation, and confront the chilling reality of a medium's power. 4 stories, 4 thrilling questions, all in one unforgettable episode. First, we join the legendary Sherlock Holmes in the case of the missing heiress. A young woman vanishes, leaving behind only a cryptic note. But is it a kidnapping or something far stranger? Can Holmes decipher the clues before it's too late?
The makers of Clipper Craft clothes for men and 924 leading retail stores from coast to coast present the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. And so once again we find ourselves in Dr. Watson's cheerful firelit study. Outside, a cutting October wind scurries the brittle leaves. But inside, all snug and cozy, with his feet on the well-polished fender, sits our favorite host and storyteller.
Thank you, Mr. Harris, thank you. And now, Mr. Harris, to our story. The case of the missing heiress. Put your boots on the fender and make yourself comfortable.
A perfect combination. A crackling fire to warm one's feet and a hair-raising adventure to chill one's spine.
Sounds rather like one of those confounded hot and cold shower baths that are the curse of this modern age. Now, in the good old Baker Street days, when one made one's daily ablutions in a tin tub that was filled from a pair of steaming jugs...
One got in and out as fast as possible to prevent freezing to death, eh, Dr. Watson?
Only in the winter-time, Mr. Harris, only in the winter. I remember one bright July afternoon in the year... Let me see. Oh, never mind, it was before you were out of your cradle. I was splashing about in my morning tub.
I thought you said it was afternoon.
When one shared lodgings and adventures with the great Sherlock Holmes, one frequently took one's morning tub in the afternoon or evening. Now, where was I?
Splashing around in your morning tub in mid-afternoon.
Oh, yes. As a matter of accuracy, I was just removing the soap from back of the ears and giving a not-inspired rendition of a current comic opera hit when Holmes burst in rather unceremoniously. Wandering minstrel, a thing of shreds and patches.
For heaven's sake, Watson, stop that caterwauling and throw on a dressing gown. We're about to have a caller, and I'm sure it means another case.
And why should that interrupt my bath? You're quite capable of handling the first stages of a case by yourself, Holmes.
Not when it concerns a lady in hysterics in a court train. You're much better than I at managing female agitation.
Holmes, what are you raving about?
An elegant carriage has just galloped up to our curbstone. And without waiting for the footman to alight from the box and assist her, a middle-aged creature in full court regalia, complete to the feathers in her hair, bursts out into the street and is even now pulling our front doorbell out by the roots.
Oh, Lord, well...
Aha, Mrs. Hudson's let her in. She's coming up the stairs. Now, will you come out and protect me?
Certainly not.
Very well, then. I shall be obliged to usher her in here.
Oh, no, great Scott, wait, I'm coming. Good Lord, look at me. A fine way to greet a lady.
Don't worry. Unless I'm greatly mistaken, she's too upset to notice. Here, tie the cord around your middle.
Oh, yes, of course.
And you put your slippers on the wrong feet.
Oh, confound it.
Come in.
Mr. Holmes. Oh, Mr. Holmes, thank heavens I find you at home.
Why, Lady Maynooth.
Oh, Dr. Watson, delighted to see you. Could you give me a glass of sherry? Oh, this is terrible. I'm ruined. And the poor girl, Oh, Mr. Holmes, you must find her. You must.
Of course, Lady Maynooth. But first, perhaps you'd better tell us the name of this damsel in distress and inform us just what difficulty she seems to be in.
But that's just it. I haven't the remotest idea. I don't mean I don't know her name. It's Elizabeth. Elizabeth Bascom.
Not Miss Lizzie Bascom, the only child of old Hellfire Bascom, the Canadian Copper King.
That's right, Dr. Watson.
Oh, quite the belle of the season, I gather.
Yes, Elizabeth has certainly been popular. Not that it's made the slightest impression on her.
Yes, perhaps that explains her popularity.
That and her father's millions. But why are you so concerned about Miss Elizabeth Bascom, Lady Maynooth?
It's been my responsibility to sponsor the young lady through her first London season, to see that she makes the proper social connections and, well, her father is bound and determined that she shall marry into the nobility.
I had no idea that George Bascom, more often referred to as Hellfire, was one of your acquaintances, Lady Maynooth.
To be quite frank, Mr. Holmes, I've never set eyes on Elizabeth's father, but a mutual friend. Knowing that he was anxious to have her received in the best circles, and also knowing that my own financial position has not been too secure lately, I was, shall we say, persuaded to take Elizabeth under my wing.
I hope you made a profitable arrangement.
I did, Mr. Holmes, but I've earned it, every penny.
You mean the young lady is uncouth in spite of her good looks?
Oh, no, Dr. Watson. The truth forces me to admit that Elizabeth is really quite presentable and even lovable when not crossed.
But when she is crossed, she takes after her father?
Exactly. She insists on going for solitary walks, completely unchaperoned. She strikes up an acquaintance with the most unlikely people.
Democratic, eh, Holmes?
It might be considered democratic in an ordinary female. But where a young woman of Miss Bascom's wealth is concerned, it's rather dangerous.
Oh, how true. We've been receiving, not exactly threats, but certainly crank letters ever since it became known that Elizabeth had come to stay with me. But she absolutely refuses to pay heed to her own danger. Says she's been handling situations of that sort all her life, and she refuses to become perturbed about it at this late date. And now it's happened.
What has?
Oh, I finally persuaded her to take an interest in young Lord Weaverbrook. A very suitable match in every way. In fact, her father is arriving on the next boat in order to announce the engagement.
Well, surely that's nothing to be upset about.
Oh, yes, but what is he going to do when he finds his daughter has been abducted?
Abducted? You mean forcibly?
This note was pinned to the carriage seat when I returned and found Elizabeth gone.
I gather from your costume, Lady Maynooth, that you were on your way to Buckingham Palace?
Yes, Mr. Holmes. After considerable maneuvering, I had arranged to have Miss Bascom received at court. It took a bit of doing, and I'll admit I expected trouble with Elizabeth. However, she fell in with the plan with quite a show of alacrity, even standing patiently for endless fittings of her train and taking lessons in how to make a court bow.
Yes, I've often wondered how one managed it.
Don't interrupt, Watson. Go on, Lady Maynooth. Today, I take it, was the day.
Yes, and more perfect weather one couldn't have wished for. And I must say Elizabeth seemed to be in high spirits. We were well prepared with the usual hamper of wine and sandwiches and cake. You know, that interminable wait in St. James's Park.
Yes, I've thought often that the sight of the ladies in their full regalia on the way to a court function is one of the great sights of London.
Elizabeth seemed to share your opinion, Dr. Watson. At any rate, she seemed in unusually high spirits as the other carriages crowded around us.
What fun, Lady Maynooth. It's even more exciting than a regatta. All the street musicians and the crowds passing on the sidewalks as if it were a parade. All waving and cheering and calling to us.
Oh, there she goes. That's Lizzie Bascom.
Elizabeth, my dear, one doesn't wave at them. It's not done.
I'm sorry.
Oh, now, cover your flowers with a napkin, my dear. The sun is really becoming rather oppressive.
If you ask me, it's darned hot.
Look at that.
Now, Elizabeth, you mustn't smile back. It only encourages them.
But why shouldn't I smile? I'm so happy.
Just control yourself another moment, dear, and we'll be inside the gate where the crowd can't follow us.
Oh, then we're nearly there.
Heavens, no. It takes ages, even after you're in the courtyard. Yes. Here we go. That's better. Now, let's see what's in our luncheon hamper. I'll admit I'm half-starved.
Oh, no. No, let's wait. I'm still so excited. Oh, Lady Maynooth, look! Who's that handsome man walking among the carriages and sticking his head into some of them?
Oh, dear, I wish he wouldn't. His mother would be so put out if she knew he were out here. But they will do it, all the boys. They say it's much more fun than it is inside.
Lady Maynooth, he's coming this way. Oh, he's going to stop.
Well, so this is the carriage that has been causing all the commotion. No wonder. Hello there.
Hello yourself.
Well, that's refreshing. So this is the beautiful Lizzie who has set the town on its ears. Oh, Lady Maynooth, I didn't notice you at first. You wouldn't by any chance have some smelling salts? The Dowager Duchess of Kiel seemed rather wonky as I passed to Baruch. I wonder if you'd come and take a look at her.
Why, of course, certainly. Let's see, where did I put the smelling salt?
In your reticule, Lady Maynooth.
Oh, yes, of course. I'll be right back. Oh, And Elizabeth,
Yes, Lady Maynooth?
if that gentleman should return, be sure you address him as Your Highness. And that, Mr. Holmes, was the last I saw of Elizabeth Bascom. She was abducted in broad daylight, right there in the courtyard of Buckingham Palace.
You don't think it was done by a prince of the blood royal? They've been known to pull some rather spectacular pranks.
No member of the House of Hanover, Dr. Watson, would write this note. It was pinned to the cushions of the seat, directly behind the box.
May I see Lady Maynooth?
Of course, Mr. Holmes.
Yes, the whole affair was undoubtedly planned in advance.
Well, what makes you say that, Holmes?
The words are printed in ink, large, bold lettering, and the paper's been folded. Furthermore, there's a rather carefully executed dusky palm print in the lower left-hand corner.
But what is the message? What does the note say?
The words of communication of this sort are always the least enlightening part of the epistle, Watson. But just to satisfy your curiosity, I'll read them to you.
Dashed right of you.
We have kidnapped Lizzie. If you know what's good for her, don't tell the cops. Signed, the Black Hand.
Oh, a band of American cutthroats. The words kidnapped and cops are dead giveaway. I've heard of these Black Hand gangs. Poor Lizzie. Men like that are desperate characters.
Oh, dear.
We can only hope her father will arrive in time to pay any ransom demands.
Oh, Mr. Holmes.
Yes, we may be dealing with a band of cutthroats and desperados, but let's not jump to any conclusions, Watson, until we've examined the scene of the crime.
What do you mean you expect to find clues in all that turmoil in the courtyard of Buckingham Palace?
No, Watson, the scene of the crime is much closer than that. It is, in fact, drawn up to our curb. I allude, of course, to Lady Maynooth's carriage.
Oh, I see what you mean. I hadn't thought of that. Well, come along. What are we waiting for?
For you to go and finish dressing, Watson.
Whoa, Jonathan. Easy now, Penelope.
Handsome horses you have, Lady Maynooth.
Thank you. This is Horace, Mr. Holmes. Horace has been our footman for over 50 years.
I am man and boy. And that's the truth.
A record to be proud of, Horace, in these troubled times.
Eh?
He's a little deaf, Mr. Holmes. It's his age.
I said you've a fine record, Horace.
I have that.
If you'll open the door, please, Horace. Mr. Holmes is a detective. He'd like to inspect the carriage.
I know who Mr. Holmes is, Mum. Everybody knows Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Horace, when did you first become aware that Miss Bascom was not in the carriage?
What? When her ladyship come back and found your note.
You didn't see or hear anything unusual before that?
I did not. Henry, he's our coachman, you know, had gone off to help Lord Brunsey's man, who was having trouble with his horses. And I had me hands full holding our horses, but I handled them.
Start fellow, Horace.
Besides which, I'm a bit deaf. Not that you could notice, but it keeps me from hearing things.
I'm afraid Horace is but a broken reed in this affair.
What's that?
I said thank you, Horace. Well, let's have a look inside the carriage. Give me my magnifying glass, Watson.
Yes.
Yes, it's interesting. Very interesting.
What have you found, Holmes? Bloodstains?
On the contrary, there's not the slightest indication of a struggle. Either Miss Bascom left the carriage of her own free will, or she was lured out of it by someone she considered a friend. Very significant. Very.
Significant, Holmes, but hardly helpful.
Yes, here is her parasol, neatly furled. Surely, if she'd been attacked, she'd have attempted to use it as a weapon. And the luncheon hamper, neatly placed in the corner. Open up the lid, Watson.
Very well. Hello?
What's up?
The silly thing's empty. Not even a crumb left.
The blackguards. They not only abducted my ward, they stole my lunch as well. The pound cake hadn't even been cut into.
The scoundrels. Well, Holmes, I'm afraid we've really drawn a blank. No clues at all.
Not so fast, Watson. Here is a long thread of heavy silk. Lady Maynooth, has Miss Lizzie, by any chance, a garment with a blue fringe in her wardrobe?
Yes, of course. The pelerine that goes over a puce walking suit. But what has that to do with the case? She was wearing full court regalia when she was abducted.
That's what makes it so preposterous, really. You know, you couldn't possibly kidnap a lady in a court costume.
Hello, here's something in the side pocket of the hamper.
Why, that's Elizabeth's guidebook. She was always sneaking off by herself with that under her arm. From the number of times it happened, she must have visited all the sights of London.
Not all, Lady Maynooth. I fancy Miss Elizabeth rather specialized in the British Museum.
How do you arrive at that conclusion?
The rest of the volume's rather stiff, showing very few of the pages have been read. But notice how readily the book opens at the portion describing the British Museum. And here, the paragraphs describing the famous Elgin marbles. That page is decidedly dog-eared.
The Elgin marbles?
Yes.
Good heavens, I'd no idea Elizabeth was a connoisseur of art.
I fancy Miss Elizabeth is a connoisseur of many things of which you had no idea, Lady Maynooth.
Oh, dear, what do we do now? I suppose we'd better consult Scotland Yard.
I rather fancy that a certain Mr. Percy Smithers will prove more helpful in this matter. I suggest that Watson and I pay him a visit.
Percy Smithers? Who in thunder is he?
The famous archaeologist and authority on Greek and Roman relics. He is also curator of the Elgin marbles. Here we are, Watson, the British Museum. Imposing, if somewhat moth-eaten old mausoleum, eh, what?
Well, you needn't point it out to me as if I'd never laid eyes on it before. I had an uncle whose idea of entertaining his various visiting nephews was to trail them through the British Museum.
And you, of course, have never been guilty of escorting your juvenile relatives through its echoing halls.
Well, that is, one must keep up the traditions, you know.
Well, never mind. Open the door.
I can't. It's stuck. Oh, never mind. Here comes an attendant. I say, God, the entrance seems to be a bit balky. We can't get it open, don't you know?
And why would you? It's been locked up for the night. Closing time was 20 minutes ago.
Oh, then I guess we won't get to see the marbles today, Holmes.
I'm not particularly interested in the marbles, Watson. Guard, can you tell me if Mr. Smithers, curator Percy Smithers, is still on the premises?
Oh, no, sir. He's gone home.
You saw him leave?
Well, he always leaves 5 minutes before closing time.
I don't suppose you can give us his home address.
Oh, I can do better than that, sir. There it be, over there. First house across the quadrangle.
The one with the bay window?
That's right.
Thank you. Come along, Watson.
Do you know this fellow Smithers, Holmes?
Only slightly, Watson. I've met him at the Diogenes Club from time to time when I've gone there to see my brother Mycroft. Like all the rest of the members, he's what you might call taciturn.
Oh, the grumpy old professor type, I take it.
Professorial and grumpy, I grant you, but he's certainly not old. In fact, Mr. Percy Smithers looks not unlike the Greek statues he's such an authority on. Only with more clothing, of course.
Oh, yes, I can remember that there were many elderly ladies who got up a petition demanding draperies be put on the marbles when they first went on exhibition. I, of course, consider them perfect as they are.
Then you've seen the Elgin marbles?
Many times.
You recall the statue of Perseus?
Perfectly.
Could you describe his attitude?
I can do better than that. I can duplicate it. He's standing like this.
Not bad, except the positions of the left and right arm should be reversed.
Oh,
Has your friend took a fit, sir?
certainly not. I was just explaining something. And stop following us.
I wasn't following, sir. I was just going home to me supper.
Pumpkin?
You recall the face, Watson, of the Perseus statue, I mean?
Oh, naturally.
How would you describe the nose?
Why, that is Grecian, of course.
Wrong again, Watson. That particular statue has no nose at all. It's probably been missing for centuries.
Oh,
Oh, but here we are at Mr. Smithers' door. Ring the bell, Watson. That's a good fellow.
always giving orders. Well, I still don't understand what information you expect to gather from the curator of the British Museum about a missing Canadian heiress.
You never know, Watson. You never know.
Yes, what do you want?
We've come to see Mr. Smithers, Mr. Percy Smithers.
Well, you can't see him.
I'm sorry to disturb him if he's having his supper, but this matter is rather urgent.
You can't see him because he's not come home. And as for his supper, it's been burnt to a crisp waiting for him. And a fine trout it was, too, that he ordered special.
What a pity. Perhaps you could tell me if a young lady in a blue and puce walking suit has called on Mr. Smithers lately.
Certainly not. Mr. Smithers is a respectable man and a woman-eater besides.
Well, once again we draw a blank. This case seems to lead nowhere but down blind alleys.
Oh, on the contrary, Watson, the fact that Mr. Smithers did not come home for his supper is decidedly revealing.
You don't think he's been forcibly kidnapped, too, by the same outfit that abducted Miss Bascom?
No, I don't think there are any indications of kidnapping. At least I doubt that any force was used.
Of course. How stupid I've been. Mr. Smithers and Miss Bascom have eloped.
Watson, the incurable romanticist.
Well...
No, Watson, a woman hater, myself excepted, of course, might conceivably change his mind. But no ardent lover would order trout, a single trout for supper, on the day on which he expected to run off with his inamorata.
Well, where does all that get us?
Whatever detained Percival Smithers was unexpected, entirely unexpected. Come, let's go home before our supper's been burned to a crisp.
Oh, Holmes, how can you think of food when you haven't rescued Miss Bascom from heaven knows only what danger?
Whatever danger Miss Lizzie's in, I rather imagine she enjoys. Yes, there's nothing further we can do until tomorrow at 8:30.
Why 8:30?
That is the time they unbar the entrance to the British Museum. Yes, we shall be waiting at 8:22.
Well, it's 8:25, Holmes. Another 5 minutes and we shall know if your guess is right.
I never guess, Watson.
I say, Holmes, isn't that Lady Maynooth's carriage coming down the street at a full gallop?
Yes, Mrs. Hudson must have told her she'd find us here. Yes, here she comes like a ship under full sail.
I say, who's the red-faced little man with her?
I rather imagine Papa Bascom has arrived.
Dead, rat the dead, blasted dead, burned. So you're Sherlock Holmes. Why in blazes haven't you found my daughter?
I was right, Watson. It is Hellfire Bascom. How do you do, sir? Good morning, Lady Maynooth.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, the most horrible news. The most horrible, horrible news.
They haven't found a body.
No, but first of all, when I returned home last evening, my butler informed me that all the sandwiches, the wine and the cake had been found in the jardiniere of my best aspidistra. Oh, the cook is so insulted she threatens to leave.
Yes, I rather suspected that hamper held something more interesting than food when I found that blue thread.
And that's not all. Tell him the worst.
Well, this morning, before I'd even had time to have my morning tea, Lord Bruns's man returned Elizabeth's court gown and feathers. They'd been found in his carriage.
Why, the scoundrel.
Oh, he wasn't in it at the time. He was still at the reception when his coachman discovered the dress.
But this makes matters even worse. The poor girl was abducted in her petticoats.
Yes, the poor girl. Her reputation will be ruined.
Ah, blast her reputation, ma'am. She'll catch her death of cold.
Calm yourself, Mr. Bascom. I think I may be able to return your daughter with both her health and her reputation moderately intact. Yes, they're opening the doors now. If you will follow me.
What? Into the British Museum?
Calm yourself, Mr. Bascom. A little culture is quite harmless, I assure you. Ah, our friend the guard. I believe you're about to unlock the hall to the Elgin Marbles. Mind if we watch?
No, not if it'll give you any amusement. I've been unlocking it 8 years now, and it's never been what you might call fascinating.
Today, I think you may be in for a surprise.
Well, seeing's believing.
Well, it's about time. Where the devil were you last night? Didn't you hear me shouting?
Mr. Smithers, you've been locked in with them marble women all night?
And one that wasn't marble.
Lizzie! What in thunder are you doing here?
Yes, and wearing the puce and blue walking suit.
Papa! Well, what do you know? Papa, I want you to meet Mr. Percy Smithers, the famous scientist, and your future son-in-law.
Scientist? I wouldn't let you marry a scientist if he were the last man on earth.
But, Papa, we've been locked up together all night. Think of my reputation.
Well, you scoundrel. You planned all this. You lured my innocent little girl into this trap.
Really, my dear.
Oh, Papa, don't be silly. I was the one that trapped Percy. I planned it all. I picked yesterday because all the crowds would be at Buckingham Palace and the museum would be empty.
So you threw the food into the jardiniere, packed your walking suit in the food hamper, changed in Lord Bruns's carriage, and headed for the British Museum.
Yes. The hard part was fascinating Percy so he wouldn't notice it was closing time. As a matter of fact, it wasn't as hard as I'd expected. You see, I suspected Percy, liked me, but I couldn't get him to propose.
But she's too confounded rich.
You look here, my boy. You'll marry her now if I have to get out my old shotgun.
Well, of course, I rather wanted to anyway, but only on one condition.
What's that? Dead, blast it.
She has to promise to live within my income.
Darling!
That was all she wanted to know.
And did Lizzie live within her husband's income, Dr. Watson?
Well, more or less. At least if Papa gave her presents from time to time, Percy never knew about it.
How did Elizabeth and her archaeologist get along?
Oh, splendidly. You see, Hellfire Bascom backed several expeditions for the British Museum, and curiously enough, Percival Smithers generally headed them. Did some splendid work, too. So when he was finally knighted and Lizzie became Lady Elizabeth, everyone said she'd more than earned the title.
The makers of Clippercraft Clothes and 924 leading retail stores from coast to coast have brought you another in the new series of broadcasts featuring the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is produced and directed by Basil Lochran, and our stories are written by Edith Miser, with special music by Albert Berman. Holmes is played by John Stanley, Dr. Watson by Alfred Shirley. Be sure to listen next week to Sherlock Holmes in the Adventure of the Red-Headed League. If you wish to attend the Sherlock Holmes broadcast in New York, see your local Clippercraft dealer, and he'll tell you how to obtain tickets.
From the streets of London, we shift to another Holmesian adventure. The affair of the politician, the Lighthouse, and the trained Cormorant. A seemingly simple request to locate a missing person will quickly unravel into a tangled web of deception and unexpected connections. What secrets lie hidden within the shadows of Limehouse?
The makers of Clippercraft Clothes for Men and 924 leading retail stores from coast to coast present the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. Our stories are based upon the character of Sherlock Holmes, created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and the dramatizations are by Edith Miser. And now for our weekly visit to the familiar firelit study of our old friend, Dr. Watson. We open the door and find the good doctor on his hands and knees rummaging through a travel-worn and battered tin dispatch box. Great Caesar's ghost, don't tell me that's the one, the famous box containing the records of Sherlock Holmes' unpublished cases.
It is indeed, Mr. Harris, it is indeed.
But I thought that was supposed to be kept deep in the vaults of the Bank of Cox and Company of Charing Cross.
Oh, not during the war, it wasn't, thank heaven. The bank was hit twice, you may remember. Yes, at the very beginning of the late unpleasantness, the government evacuated this box, along with several other notable British documents, such as certain Shakespeare folios, to a safe place in the country.
Oh, I see. And they've just been returned to you now? Why the delay, Doctor?
Would you believe it? They told me these papers were too valuable to be in private ownership. They claim they belong in the British Museum. I told them they could put these records in the British Museum when Holmes is safely buried in Westminster Abbey.
A great many years from now, let's hope.
Amen. Well, now, yes, I've been going over these files to see if I couldn't find our subject for tonight's story. Yes, I think I can do no better than relate this one. The one to which Holmes invariably referred as the affair of the politician, the Lighthouse, and the trained Cormorant.
What exactly is a cormorant, Dr. Watson?
A largish bird, Mr. Harris, that is inordinately fond of fish, which it dives into the water to catch. The word cormorant is a French derivation. Cor meaning raven, and marin meaning marine.
Oh, yes, the raven of the sea. Sounds vaguely sinister, Dr. Watson.
It was, Mr. Harris, it was indeed. This particular cormorant, whose name was Tika, was directly responsible for the death of the disreputable old baggage who, Oh, there I go, getting ahead of myself again. To begin at the beginning, it was a cold, wet November night. A Saturday night, to be exact. Holmes, overcome with the restless energy which sometimes burned inside him like a seething volcano, had insisted on a visit to the Port of London, the Chinese section of it that is so often referred to in tones of awe and terror as Limehouse. We had just turned off West India Dock Road. Against the sky rose Limehouse Church, the one thing of beauty in a sordid landscape. Yellow and brown men pattered by on slippered feet. Strange voices, whispering in strange tongues, crept out of dark corners. The air was heavy with the stench of betel nuts, shandu, and fried fish. A clinging mist crept in off the river. In the channel, a foghorn wailed like a lost soul. Holmes, what's the point of all this meandering? First up one dilapidated alley, then down the next. I'm frozen to the bone. Let's get home before someone slits our throats from behind.
Nice trick if it can be done, Watson. No, a stab in the back, or perhaps a bit of thuggy with a fine silken cord would be more in keeping with this neighborhood.
What's the good of all this prowling about?
But, Watson, we promised Mrs. Hudson we'd bring her some tea. Some suey sen in little 2-ounce packets at 7p each. A shy little tea to fill the hour of 4 to 5 with delicate scents and dreams. The slop she's been giving us lately is enough to rot the lining of one's stomach.
Well, then, let's buy the stuff and go home. That is, if you can remember where the shop is.
It's just across the crazy bridge up ahead there that leads to the Isle of Dogs. A small spice shop run by my good friend Sam Ling Lee.
Well, then, let's go there and get it over with.
Impatience, Watson, is the curse of our Western civilization. Always in a hurry. Never taking time to taste, to savor. Really to observe life.
Oh, what is there worth observing in this God-forsaken district, I'd like to know?
Quick, Watson, duck into this doorway.
No, je ne peux pas payer.
You dirty little thief! I'll fix you!
Good Lord, Holmes, that man was chasing her with a stiletto. After them down the next alley.
Too late, Watson.
Great Scott, Holmes. Aren't you going to do something?
What is there to do, Watson? That poor, tortured soul. She's better off dead.
Holmes, you are a cold-blooded fish. At least we could try to catch the man who stabbed her.
That is a job for the official police. We must leave something for them to do, you know. Incidents like this occur every day in Limehouse. No, the individual I'd like to bring to justice is the real murderer in this and 100 other cases.
Who's that?
The purveyor of little white packages like the one that poor frantic derelict clutched so tightly in her hand. The chief of the outfit which peddles death and decay in the form of exotic dreams.
You know who he is?
Naturally. The annoying part of the situation is that I've been completely unable to persuade any of his victims to testify against him. They're all so tragically dependent on him for his filthy wares. Oh, but enough of that. What we've just witnessed is commonplace. But here comes something I think you'll admit is rather unusual, even in Limehouse.
Yes, what do you mean?
Look there across the street, Watson. Ever see a man take a bird for a walk? It's Paru, the crippled Lascar, taking Tika for his nightly outing. They're coming down the steps of the house across the way.
They're crossing the street. That's a curious-looking bird. It waddles like a duck, but its beak is different. Its neck is almost as long as a swan's.
That, Watson, is a cormorant, a very intelligent biped. In many tropical countries, the natives train them to catch fish.
Do not fear, my beautiful Tika. The men will not harm you. Paru will protect his Tika. Careful. Here the stones are sharp.
Well, I'll be...
Undoubtedly, Watson. Paru couldn't be more attached to Tika if he were his own son.
But, did you see the bird's eyes? They shone yellow in the light of the street lamp, like a cat's.
Yes, many of the natives hereabouts are afraid of the bird. They say he has the evil eye. Perhaps that's why Paru and Tika are considered star boarders at the Lighthouse across the way.
The Lighthouse?
It's the name of the most notorious lodging house in all of Limehouse. Chinese, Lascars, and East Indians sleep there, 10 and 12 to a room on the bare floors or on mildewed mattresses. Tika and Paru sleep curled up in a closet on the top floor. At least they have privacy.
Charming place. Why in heaven's name don't the authorities clean it out?
Authority around here, Watson, is Harry Hawkins, called Handsome Harry by the natives because he's so definitely the opposite. Mr. Hawkins not only owns most of the houses in this area, he's councilman for this district.
Yes, but surely it's not good business to let your property go to rack and ruin like that place across the way.
The Lighthouse, Watson, is run by a vicious old reprobate who's known as Mother Fishface. partly because she has no teeth and a cold and fishy eye, and partly because she runs a fish house in the kitchen under the steps, where she dispenses decayed fish and chips at twopence a portion to the poor starving wretches who inhabit the rooms upstairs. Mother Fishface is the only one who dares talk back to Mr. Hawkins. She's the only one who dares to be late with her rent. In fact, it's rumored that she has something on the old boy, and he's definitely afraid of her.
Knows where the body's buried, eh, Holmes?
Or how he procures the opium and hashish he undoubtedly deals in. I suspect most of her boarders are smugglers of the vile stuff.
So we came down here for the purpose of buying tea for Mrs. Hudson, and now we suddenly seem to be interested in a dope-running outfit. Holmes, you don't fool me for a moment.
5 years' association with Sherlock Holmes seems to have sharpened your powers of observation, my dear Watson.
Well,
Quiet, Watson. Quick, slip behind this wall. Here comes Mr. Hawkins on his weekly collection rounds.
Open up there. Saturday night. Rent's due.
Here's your money, Mr. Hawkins, blast you.
Charming fellow, Mr. Hawkins.
Quiet, Watson. He's about to knock on the kitchen door opposite. Let's see what happens at the Lighthouse.
Hi there, Mother. It's me, Handsome Mary, come to pay you a visit.
What do you want, you old fool?
What would I want, dearie? It's Saturday night, rent night. You're a week behind now.
Supposing I am. You ain't starving. You can wait, can't you?
No, old girl, you know I wouldn't press me old sweetheart. Here, look, I brought you a present. A fine bottle of gin.
What's wrong with it? Is it poisoned?
I'll have your little joke, won't you, dearie?
No, I don't think you do a thing like that, Harry. The day they find me murdered, that's the day you'll wish you'd never been born.
How you do run on. If anything was to happen to you, you know it'd break me heart.
Wouldn't it just? Here comes that cripple and his bleeding bird. It's always sneaking into me door and making away with a fish.
Them birds has a weakness for fish.
Well, if he don't keep out of my kitchen, it'll be the weakness that finishes him. Hey, you there, Peru.
Yes, Madam Fishface.
Keep your dirty bird out of my kitchen, and don't you call me madam.
My Tika is not as dirty as your kitchen. And as for your fish, I would not feed it to a swine, much less my beautiful Tika.
There he goes, sticking his head in the door. Here, get out, you.
Stop!
Go on.
Stop! Do not raise that broom to my Tika.
Not raise the broom, is it? Listen to me, you slimy heathen. That bird comes into my kitchen once more, and I'll wring his bleeding neck.
You listen to me, Madam Fishface, and listen well. You touch one feather of Tika's beautiful neck, and I will kill you. I will kill you dead.
Here, now, that's enough. I'll have no one threatening Mother Fishface.
You heard what he said. You heard him. There, out he goes, out of my house. Let him sleep in the streets. Let him sleep in the gutter with his dirty bird.
No, Mother, don't you get your danded up. Go on in and drink your bottle. That's a good girl. It's Saturday night, remember? You got a little spree coming to you.
I know what I'm doing. No one has to tell me.
Come, Tika. We do not enter her filthy premises again. We go sleep in the churchyard. It is warmer than Madam Fishface's heart.
Well, that little commotion seems to have resolved itself, eh, Mr. Holmes?
I wonder. At any rate, the fog's lifted a bit. We'd better get around to Sam Lee's place before he shuts up his shop. I could do with a dish of hot tea.
A dish? It'd take a gallon to warm me up.
Well, come along, then. It's no good loitering at Mother Fishface's door any longer, Mr. Hawkins. I fancy she and her bottle are locked in for the weekend.
Oh, inbreed. Oh, it's you. And what is the eminent Mr. Sherlock Holmes snooping around here for, eh?
Snooping? My dear Mr. Hawkins, you underrate me.
Dr. Watson and I were merely enjoying the local color. You have such lurid local color in this district, haven't you?
Delicious. The true Lapsang Souchang. Smoky, with a suggestion of the true tarred rope flavor.
Not bad. Could do with a spot of rum in it, though.
Typically British reaction, Watson. The Englishman's always insulting his palate and desecrating his tea with surpluses. Cream, milk, rum, even nasty little pieces of lemon. At any rate, the libation served its purpose. It's thawed you out.
I've drunk so much tea, I'm awash. My back teeth are practically floating.
Never mind, you look less blue around the gills.
Oh, I wish you wouldn't use that expression, Holmes. Brings back that horrible old woman's face. I say, she did look like a fish, you know, a dead fish. Hello. Look out of the window. Here's handsome Harry running down the street.
Yes, seems to be headed in this direction. Yes, here he comes.
Oh, Mr. Holmes. Oh, thanks. Thank heavens you're here. And your friend, too. I think you said he was a doctor.
Yes, I'm a medical man. What seems to be the trouble, Mr. Hawkins?
You better come right away. She'll be needing you, no mistake.
Who'll be needing home? What's happened?
It's Mother Fishface. After I'd finished my collections, I went back to tell her about the plumbers coming in on Monday. But the door was locked, and she wouldn't answer.
Probably the result of too rapid absorption of the bottle you left behind.
Oh, you're right here. Her not answering the door wouldn't upset me most times. Only tonight there's a great smell of gas leaking out around it.
Gas? Hurry, Watson. Let's hope we're not too late.
Here we are. 2 steps down. Careful. Top one's loose.
Smell of gas. Very pronounced, eh, Holmes?
Quite. Door locked.
Shall I break it down?
Windows quicker. Stand back. I'll use this loose brick.
Phew, what a stench. Stale fish and gas.
Give it a chance to clear for a moment.
I say, there she is, Holmes. You can see her lying there behind the table. But what's that draped across her leg like a snake?
It's not a snake, Watson. It's Tika's neck. The bird is doubtless lying beside her, hidden by the body.
Tika!
Come on, over the sill we go.
Tika! Did someone see Tika? I look everywhere for him. I am asleep on a grave, and Tika sits on the tombstone. When I wake up, he's gone.
He's in there, Paru. I'm afraid we've come too late.
Tika! My beautiful Tika! She has destroyed him.
All right, come in, all of you.
I kill her. I slit her throat.
Paru, put away that knife. And take the bird outside. Try artificial respiration. Don't waste any time. Watson, you look out for the old woman.
My pretty, my beautiful Tika.
Here, I better turn off this here gas jet on the stove. It's wide open.
Don't touch it. But confound it, did you have to do that?
Well, you didn't want to asphyxiate a lot of us, did you?
No. But I did want to examine that handle for fingerprints.
Oh, it's no go, Holmes. I can't bring her round. She's turning cold.
Yes, gas poisoning. That's what finished her. Unusually florid face. Gas poisoning complicated by cerebral thrombosis brought on by alcohol and high blood pressure.
Yes, I noticed the uneven dilation of her pupils.
Yes.
Poor old dear. One never knows, eh, Mr. Holmes? Who'd have thought the next time I saw her she'd be lying there like that, cold as a mackerel?
But if she wanted to commit suicide, Mr. Hawkins, why was only one gas jet open? Why not turn on the lot, eh, Holmes?
I doubt very much if it was suicide, Watson.
You don't mean it's murder? But the door was locked. No one could have got in.
Well, that's right, Mr. Holmes. She never gave no one the key. It must have been accidental. Or at least that's what it was supposed to look like.
What brings you to that fascinating conclusion, Mr. Hawkins?
It was that bird what did it, mark my words. Time and again he knocked that gas jet open. Always old Mother Fishface would scream at him and shut it off. Only tonight, like as not, she was too drunk to notice.
Drunk from the gin you brought her?
I always brought her a bottle of gin on Saturday nights. It was that dirty Lascar did it. You heard him say he'd kill her. He knew she'd be drunk, and he shoved his bird in here. He did it. knowing he'd turn on the gas, reaching for a fish frying in the stove.
Yes, there was a fish on the stove, but it was not frying because there's no frying pan. If there had been, the gas would have been lit, and there'd have been no chance for it to escape and fill the room. Yes, there was a fish on the stove, carefully draped across this handle. You'll notice that it's still greasy and smells rather strongly of mackerel. These scratches, I imagine, were caused by the bird's beak as he snatched at the fish, thereby pushing the handle and opening the jet.
Oh, that's what I said. That dirty heathen pushed his scrawny old bird in here, knowing Mother Fishface was lying helpless drunk with no way of protecting herself.
And how did he manage to push the bird in here with all the doors and windows locked?
Oh, I see what you mean. And it couldn't have been murder. It was accidental, like. The bird flew himself in.
And how did he manage to do that?
Oh, through that little trapdoor. Up there beside the window. It's got a little swinging hinge to it. So's the fish peddler could deliver fish through it when Mother Fishface wasn't home. That blinking bird, he flew up there, he did, shoved open the trap, and flew down into the room. What happened next was just like you deduced it, Mr. Holmes. It must have been. Poor old Mother Fishface, murdered accidental by a bird.
Very interesting theory, Mr. Hawkins, but unfortunately it does not jibe with the facts.
Yes, what do you mean, Holmes?
Simply this, Watson. The bird couldn't have flown in because it so happens that this particular member of the feathered tribe is an Anopterum harrisi, or Heiress cormorant, which occurs only on the Galapagos Islands. It is entirely flightless.
You mean it can't fly?
Not any farther than Dr. Watson.
But it did get in here somehow, Holmes. You'll have to admit that.
Quite. The cormorant was introduced into this kitchen by the only person, other than old Mother Fishface, who had the key to that door.
Who's that?
You, Mr. Hawkins, the landlord.
Rubbish. Well, why should I be wanting to kill the old girl? She was my best tenant.
You killed her because you suspected she was going to split to the port authorities. You got wind of the fact they'd sent me down here to get her story.
You can't prove it. You can't prove a blasted thing. Supposing you have got my fingerprints in that gas jet. Dr. Watson here is witness to the fact that he saw me turn it off.
Is that so, Holmes?
Yeah, but you'll not find my fingerprints in the lock or in the doorknob, neither.
I wondered why they were wiped clean. You were here earlier this evening. Your fingerprints should have been on the doorknob.
Well, they ain't now. You can't convict me on that.
What about the odor of fish that clings to your hands? Too bad you chose mackerel to lure Tika. Such a smelly fish. Furthermore, the notes on the papers which Watson discovered inside the woman's bodice
But Holmes,
will convict you of conducting a despicable and entirely illegal trade in opium and other... Why, Mr. Hawkins, where are you going?
Oh, I'm getting out. They won't get me. Now that the tech's going to lay his hands on me.
Holmes, why didn't you stop him?
He'll be stopped, never fear. The authorities have had the place surrounded ever since we left the tea house. Sam Lee is my go-between. Or didn't you guess?
You know dashed well I didn't. Furthermore, I don't know what you're talking about when you mention the papers I found in Mother Fishface's bodice. There weren't any papers.
I know, Watson. Bluff. Pure bluff. The important thing is Hawkins thinks we've found those papers. It's remarkable how talkative the average criminal becomes once he thinks the jig's up. The port authorities should have no trouble in finding out all they want to know. Yes, at last, the chief of this dope smuggling ring and the cause of untold human misery will be safely behind bars.
Sir Holmes, did you hear that?
Yes, it's Tika. I thought Paru might be able to bring him round. You see, he didn't have as much alcohol in his system as Mother Fishface. Let that be a lesson to you, Watson.
You go to blazes.
And now, Dr. Watson, did they succeed in convicting the handsome Mr. Harry Hawkins?
They did indeed, Mr. Harris. They did indeed. Mr. Hawkins spilled the beans, as you say, with very little persuasion. As a matter of fact, Mother Fishface did have quite a few incriminating records tucked away carefully, which we subsequently found.
Hidden in an old teapot or the family flour barrel, no doubt.
Hidden away in a vault in the bank in Threadneedle Street, together with a very handsome collection of English banknotes.
Thrifty old gal. Who inherited the money, Doctor?
Holmes saw to it that the money went to the Limehouse mission for stranded seamen. He also arranged for Paru to spend his declining years there. He even managed to wangle a permission for him to keep Tika perched on the foot of his bed.
I guess there's nothing that can't be done if Sherlock Holmes sets his mind to it.
I agree, Mr. Harris. Of course, I wouldn't want Holmes to know about it.
When did Holmes first suspect that Hawkins had murdered old Mother Fishface, Doctor?
Oh, he was pretty sure of it, Mr. Harris, when he realized Hawkins had run for a doctor without first stopping to break a window or turn off the gas.
In other words, Hawkins was taking no chances the old girl might come to.
Yes, that's about the size of it.
And now I wonder if you'd like to give us an idea about what we can look forward to next week, Dr. Watson.
Well, now, let me see. I think that next week I'll tell you how witchcraft suddenly came to life again in the west of England, and how the investigation of a fairy ring in the grass and a weather-beaten broomstick covered with medieval recipe for flying ointment led Holmes to one of the most diabolical criminals he ever encountered. I call it the laughing lemur of High Tower Heath.
Sounds appropriate for what is practically Halloween.
Why do you think I chose it, Mr. Harris? Why do you think I chose it?
The makers of Clippercraft Clothes and 924 leading stores from coast to coast have brought you another in the new series of broadcasts featuring the world's most famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is produced and directed by Basil Lochran, with special music by Albert Berman. Holmes is played by John Stanley, Dr. Watson by Alfred Shirley.
Our next story takes us into the heart of human desires and the lengths people will go to fulfill them. The Whistler presents the house on Hainsley Boulevard. A man, crushed by debt, is desperate for a solution. Will he resort to the unthinkable to secure his future?
I am the Whistler. And I know many things, for I walk by night. I know many strange tales hidden in the hearts of men and women who have stepped into the shadows. Yes, I know the nameless terrors of which they dare not speak.
And now for the Signal Oil Company, the Whistler's strange story. The House on Hainsley Boulevard.
The old Hackett place on Hainsley Boulevard was a monument to the past, built by the very first of the Hacketts to arrive in California a good many years before. It clung now to its former grandeur with a sort of quiet, determined tenacity. But one evening shortly after midnight, the quiet of the neighborhood was suddenly shattered, the air torn with a startling cry.
Fire! Fire!
Yes, the cry of fire knifing through the stillness of tree-lined Hainsley Boulevard. The old house threatened as flames leaped to envelop it, and immediately the street was alive with activity. And miraculously, coming swiftly to the rescue, a fire engine, its crew working skillfully, fighting off the threat of destruction. And then out of the crowd, a man appeared.
Mr. Hackett, the house is safe.
Yeah, I see.
No one in there, is there, Mr. Hackett? Your Aunt Leona away?
Oh, she's away, thank heaven. Spending the night in Glendale. How did it happen, Lieutenant Mullen? How did it start?
I don't know. I went past about half an hour ago, going on duty.
I know. Aunt Leona will be grateful to you, Lieutenant.
No, forget it. The funny thing, though, Mr. Hackett, thought I saw somebody running away from the place.
Huh?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'll see you later, Mr. Hackett.
Sure. And thanks, Mullen. I'd have been sick if anything had happened to the old place.
You are sick inside, aren't you, Frank? Because your plan failed so completely. And even as you thank Police Lieutenant Mullen for his swift action, you inwardly curse yourself, forgetting that he passes this way regularly, and that only a matter of a half an hour destroyed your timing. And you have to have money soon. $5,000 to clear your gambling debt with Dino DaCosta, or the payoff will be your life. Even with the damage very slight, the scene with Aunt Leona the next morning is an unpleasant one, as she surveys the scorched section at the rear of the old place.
Disgraceful.
Oh, there's very little damage, Aunt Leona.
It isn't the extent of the damage. It's your carelessness that disturbs me. I've left you everything I have in my will, and all I ask in return is that you assume some responsibility and make things easier for me while I'm still here.
Look, Aunt Leona, it could have been much worse. You worry yourself sick over this house.
It's my home, isn't it?
It's my home, too, Aunt Leona. Half mine, half yours, according to Cappy's will.
And it'll be all yours when I die, along with everything else I have. But I'm not dead yet, Frank.
Just the same, we ought to accept Mr. Fleming's offer to buy, if you ask me.
No one's asking you.
The old argument sounds even more hollow than usual, doesn't it, Frank? You're not getting anywhere with Aunt Leona, and you wish she were out of your way. You can't help thinking how pleasant your situation would be if something happened to her. You'd have everything you wanted. You could square yourself with Dino and have all you'd ever need besides. And there isn't much time, is there, Frank? Dino's given you 10 days. You can't stall much longer. Later that day, you seek out the only solace these last few months have offered. Adele Richards. Lovely. Beautiful. You could marry her if you could support her. Couldn't you, Frank?
She's a stubborn old woman. Fleming's outfit has bought up most of the other houses along the street, but she won't sell. She's going to put up an office building eventually.
Probably want to sell then.
Sure, when it's too late. Old Cappy had the right idea.
Cappy?
Captain Hackett, Aunt Leona's husband.
Oh.
He up and left about 8 years ago. Went out one night for some pipe tobacco. So he said. Never came back. I don't blame him. But then he had some money. He could afford to run. I can't.
You want to run, Frank?
From her and from that infernal old house, yes. From you, darling, never.
Oh, Frank.
Oh, great. Don't answer it.
It's silly. I have to. Hello? Oh, yes. Yes, he's here. I'll call him. It's for you, Frank. It's Dina DaCosta. He knows you're here.
Okay. Hello, Dino.
I thought I might catch you at your girlfriend's. I was reading the papers, Frank. That was a dumb thing to do.
What was?
Setting fire to your house. You're nuts.
No, Dino, you're wrong. I didn't do it.
Sure you did, and it didn't work. Just wanted you to know that's a bum angle, Frank. I don't like it.
What difference does it make to you what I do to settle with you?
I don't like strings on anything that's mine. That $5,000 you owe me. I want it on time, but I want it clean. Remember that, Frank.
Hello? Hello?
Frank, what is it?
Nothing.
Frank!
I'm sorry, honey. I've got a lot on my mind.
Something to do with gambling and Dino DaCosta, that's obvious. What is it?
It's... Well, might as well know. I'm into Dino for $5,000.
Frank.
I've got to get hold of the money some way.
Oh, Frank, why don't you go to your aunt? Tell her everything.
She'll blow her stack. You don't know Aunt Leona, Adele. If I did that, she'd cut me out of her will, everything. No. I'll have to get the money for Dino some other way.
Yes, Frank, some other way. And the time is short, very short. It's ironic, isn't it? Old Hackett House isn't worth much to anybody except Aunt Leona and Mr. Fleming, who wants very much to buy it. You could settle your debt with Dino if she'd agree to take Mr. Fleming's offer. That night, after Leona retires, you're groping for a solution when the phone rings.
Hello.
Mr. Hackett, John Fleming.
Oh, yes, Mr. Fleming.
Hope it's not too late to bother you, but about the house, have you talked it out with your aunt?
Why, no. That is, I have talked to her, Mr. Fleming, and, well, she's weakening, but...
Nothing definite yet, though. Nothing settled, eh?
Oh, no. Well, you know how it is. Living there so long, she's pretty attached to the place.
I know, but we can't stall this thing indefinitely. I wish you'd get a decision soon.
Oh, I will, sir. Very soon. And it's going to be a favorable one, I'm sure. She is weakening.
Good. We'll talk again soon then, eh?
You wish it were true, don't you, Frank? That there was even a slight sign of Aunt Leona weakening in her stand against selling the house. The next morning, you decide to bring the subject up once more, when, as you step out into the yard, you hear voices raised angrily. Aunt Leona's voice, and the voice of old Bosun Pete, an old friend, former shipmate of Captain Hackett, who now does odd jobs about the place.
This mess, my rose bed, my favorite rose bed. And what do? Neglect it? Ignore it?
Oh, the soil's been worked to death there, Miss Hackett. Best thing to do is rip all them prickly old scrags out of there.
Don't you dare talk that way about my roses.
Your roses, your house. Don't you ever think anything of anybody else's? Like my patience? It wears mighty thin around you, miss. I want to tell you right here.
Now, look here, Bosun. If you don't enjoy the way I do things, you don't have to stay around, you know.
All right. I will quit, and with pleasure. Goodbye to you, Miss Leone.
Old fool.
Aunt Leona.
Oh, Frank. Well, I suppose you heard.
Who didn't? Well, the neighbors must have heard you, too. Aunt Leona, you can't send that old gent away.
Can't I?
Cap Hackett said he was to have a place here as long as he wished it.
Captain Hackett's been gone over 7 years, Frank. I'd say that makes him legally dead. And dead people don't dictate to me. Nor live ones either.
Something in Aunt Leona's manner has suddenly set you to wondering. Wondering if the rose bed might hold a grim secret of your aunt's. Perhaps even the secret of her husband's strange disappearance. And you determine to find out. At dinner that night, you ask her an important question.
This weekend, Aunt Leona. Going to Glendale as usual? Cousin Ellie's?
Thought I might. Why?
Well, nothing. Just wondered.
Oh. If I do go, I hope I can trust you to remain in the premises and look after the place better than last time.
Oh, of course you can, Aunt Leona. I'll look after the place very well this time.
It's a hunch, isn't it, Frank? A growing belief. And quite possibly something that will help you considerably in your contest with Aunt Leona. It's far more than a test of individual wills, isn't it, Frank? The days are slipping by, and Dino DaCosta will collect your gambling debt with him one way or another. And now, with your aunt spending the weekend in Glendale, giving you some time alone on the premises, another more promising thought has entered your head. That's why you set to work as soon as she's gone. Set to work digging into the rose bed. Digging deep. But all your efforts avail you exactly nothing. Only a ruined flower bed. And at work the following Monday, you get the angry phone call you expected.
Frank? Frank, how could you? How could you allow that terrible man to take his revenge this way?
Terrible man?
Bosun Pete. He's dug up my rose bed, ruined it for good. And you let him do it, you, when you said you'd watch the place.
Well, I'm sorry, Aunt Leona. I only left for a short time. I had no idea the bosun would do such a thing.
I'm going to get the police on him. Lieutenant Mullen. I'll report him to Lieutenant Mullen.
That evening, as you sit on the front porch of Hackett House with Aunt Leona, you're a little hesitant to bring up the matter of Mr. Fleming's offer, aren't you, Frank? Yes, because you know she's still upset about the rose beds. You're sitting back, puffing on a cigarette, trying to think of some way you can ease into the subject when...
Someone's coming up the path, Frank.
Oh, yeah. Looks like Bosun.
Bosun? Well, I've got something to say to him.
Now, take it easy, Aunt Leona. I'd say from the looks of that walk, he's had a few beers.
Yeah, hello, Frank. Miss Leone.
Well, you have a nerve coming back, showing your face around here after what you've done.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about your tearing up my rose beds.
Me? I didn't have nothing to do with them rose beds. I just come for my money.
Your money? What money?
You know what money. Long before Cappy went away, he said I should have part of his money when he died.
Oh? Did he tell you that?
He told you too, and you know it.
Really? I don't seem to recall.
Listen, Miss Leone, I'm warning you. I better get my money or you'll be sorry.
Are you threatening me?
Well, call it what you want. I'll get my money if I have to choke it out of you.
Come on, Bosun. Let's take a walk.
Now, let go, Frank. I ain't finished here yet.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Come on.
You lead him away, Frank, the bosun shouting threats. Walk him down the street for several blocks to calm him down. Then you leave him. You feel sorry for the bosun, don't you? But as you turn and start back for the house, he's quickly forgotten. You've other things in your mind. Dino, Aunt Leona, Adele. You haven't seen her in days, have you? Then as you reach the crest of the hill, sight Hackett House silhouetted against the sky, you stop. Suddenly an idea hits you.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Sure. Why didn't I think of that before? Aunt Leona! Aunt Leona?
In the kitchen, Frank.
Oh.
I was fixing a cup of tea. Would you care for
No,
one?
no, thanks. Look, I just got an idea, Aunt Leona. Cappy left you several lots up in Glendale, didn't he? Not far from Cousin Ellie's place?
Yes, that's right.
Aunt Leona, why couldn't we have the house moved there? Just have it picked up, hauled away.
Move?
To the lots in Glendale. Why not, Aunt Leona? Why not?
Why not, indeed? It'd be nice being close to Ellie.
Sure it would.
But wait, wouldn't it cost a bit of money?
Oh, I don't know. Look, let me talk to Fleming.
Now, don't rush me into this, Frank. I want some time to think it over.
Okay, you think it over. But I've got another idea, and I'm going to see Fleming about it first thing in the morning. Aunt Leona, I talked to Mr. Fleming this morning, and he called me back a few minutes ago. His company is willing to move the house for us, stand all the expense.
Oh, really, Frank?
How about it? Do I tell him it's a deal?
Well, all right, Frank. All right.
Good. Now, listen, they're anxious to get on this thing right away, so you'd better scout around, see if you can find us another place to live for the time being.
There's a cottage just round the corner from here and up the street. It's for rent. I saw it this morning.
Check on it right away. I'll see you tonight, Aunt Leona.
Hello?
Hello, darling.
Well, Frank, where on earth have you been?
Well, it's a long story, but I'll be...
You're through talking, Frank.
Well, go on, darling. But you'll what?
You hear me? Hang up.
I'll call you later, Adele.
But Frank!
Later, Adele. All right. What's the idea, Dino?
I came to call, that's the idea. Was in your neighborhood, as the saying goes, and decided to drop in.
You're not the social type, Dino.
No, I ain't. So we won't visit very long. 5 more days, Frank. Or are you keeping score, too?
I know. And it looks good, Dino.
I'm not so sure. 5 days, Frank. That's all the time you got. I need to dough myself, bad. 5 days. It's gotta be.
I'll try, Dino, but I can't...
I'd do that, Frank, if I were you. Just as if your life depended on it.
Dino means business, doesn't he, Frank? 5 more days, and that's all. Somehow you manage to move yourself and Aunt Leona to the little cottage not far from Hackett House in 2 days' time. And then you go to Mr. Fleming's office to press for payment for your property.
So, any time your company wants to start moving the house is fine with us.
Good, my boy, good. I'll file for the moving permit right away. Sometimes there are little delays in getting it, and sometimes not. But we'll move the house as soon as we get the permit.
Well, as a matter of fact, Mr. Fleming, when you move the house is of no importance to me. I don't even want to hear about Hackett House until it's safely planted on those lots in Glendale. Well, about the money for the property. Since Aunt Leon and I own the property jointly, can we each receive a check for half the total amount?
Perfectly agreeable with us, and I should say, if there's some rush about it, our accounting department could get the checks out for you right away.
Oh, fine, Mr. Fleming, fine. There is some rush about it.
It's a relief, isn't it, Frank? You leave Fleming's office fortified with 2 checks. One made out to Aunt Leona for her half. The other to you for exactly the amount you must pay Dino da Costa. $5,000, your half. All for Dino. You're glad you have the money for Dino. But after you pay him, you'll be no better off than you were before. Now you know you'll never be. Unless something happens to your Aunt Leona. As you walk along the busy downtown street, you suddenly see an old friend right in front of you.
Well, Bosun, how are you?
Oh, hello, Frank. Well, look, I've been wanting to get in touch with you. I wanted to, ask Miss Leone to forgive me for the other night.
Oh, forget it.
I didn't mean to say all those things, but, I kind of needed the money.
Oh? Things pretty tough?
Yeah, pretty tough.
Well, I'll see what I can do, Bosun.
Oh, would you, Frank? You know I didn't mean to harm her or nothing like that.
Where are you staying?
At Seaman's Hotel.
I'll get in touch.
You watch Bosun as he turns away, disappears into the noonday crowd. Now you know what you're going to do, don't you, Frank? The Bosun is your answer. Soon you'll have everything you want, including Adele. Yes, Bosun Pete has given the solution, hasn't he? That night, a little after midnight, you make it a point to run into another old friend, Lieutenant Mullen of the police department, on his way to work. And as the two of you stand and chat on the street corner, you manage to steer the conversation in the direction you want it to go.
Yeah, I was beginning to wonder about Bosun. Haven't seen him in the neighborhood for some time.
Well, he's living downtown now, I understand.
Heard he had a run-in with your aunt, is that right? About the rose beds?
Yeah. Quite a session it was. He'd been drinking. Well, I really don't think he meant what he said. Threatening her, you know.
Really?
Still, you can't be too sure. He's got quite a temper. And a gun.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
But I don't think you have to worry too much about the Bosun. Oh, here comes my streetcar. I'll see you later, Mr. Hackett. Good night.
Night, Lieutenant.
You're pleased, aren't you, Frank? Satisfied with your meeting with Lieutenant Mullen. The following afternoon, you phone the Seaman's Hotel. Ask Bosun to pick you up that night, drive you out to the cottage. You've made a decision, haven't you, Frank? Set your plan into motion. Your debt with Dino will be settled. And when it's all over, you won't have to share the money from the sale of Hackett House with anyone. And you'll have all your Aunt Leona's money besides. Late that night, you're waiting on a quiet side street for Bosun to pick you up. And finally, he rounds the corner and pulls up at the curb.
Hello, Frank.
Right on time, Bosun.
Yeah.
Shouldn't want to keep Leona waiting, you know.
Sure she'll be up this late? Seems like a funny time of night.
Oh, you're wrong, Bosun. The time's perfect. Just perfect for this.
10 minutes later, you're parked in front of the cottage, and you're wearing Bosun's pea jacket and cap. Bosun is out of sight, slumped down on the seat beside you, still unconscious. You glance at your watch, then slip out of the car and hurry quietly up to the porch of the cottage to wait. It'll all be over soon, won't it, Frank? Once you get away, you'll wreck the car. Bosun will be killed, and the murder weapon will be found in his pocket. You glance at your watch again, a little after 12, and down the street. And you see him approaching right on schedule. It's Lieutenant Mullen.
Yes? Who is it?
It's Frank.
Well, Frank, did you forget your keys? What in the world are you doing in the bosun's cap? What?
As your Aunt Leona slumps to the floor, you whirl, run back to the car, jump inside. Through the rear view mirror, you can see Lieutenant Mullen running towards you. And as you put the car in gear, you let the bosun's cap fall to the street.
Bye-bye, Lieutenant. And thanks. Thanks for being right on time.
A crowd had gathered in the usually quiet side street on the fringe of downtown Los Angeles. Spoke in excited whispers, stared at the body on the sidewalk. A few feet away, Lieutenant Mullen stood by, puffing slowly on a cigarette, and his face wore a puzzled frown. Then another officer pushed his way through the crowd and joined him.
This one dead, Lieutenant?
Yeah. Name is Frank Hackett.
He killed the old lady back there at the cottage?
Uh-huh. Tried to make it look like Bosun did it.
Bosun?
The man over there in the Essex. How's he doing?
Oh, he's finally coming around. How'd you nail this Hackett fellow?
Saw him run out of the cottage his aunt had rented after I heard the shots. Thought at first it was Bosun the way he was dressed. I took off after him. I never caught him either, except that after he turned the corner, he had to abandon the car and go out on foot. That's when my bullet nailed him.
Something go wrong with his car?
No, the street was blocked.
Blocked?
Yeah. The movers were hauling a house away. It blocked the whole street. Hackett here couldn't drive the car around it. Funny thing, too. It was his home they were moving. Hackett House.
Featured in tonight's story were Bill Foreman, John Stevenson, Norma Varden, Gene Bates, Cliff Arquette, Herbert Rawlinson, Frank Richards, and Charles Seal.
And for our final chilling performance, we enter a world where the veil between the living and the dead is thin. Dark fantasy brings us a delicate case of murder, a chilling tale of spiritualism and deception. Is the medium truly in contact with the other side, or is something far more sinister at play?
Dark fantasy. A delicate case of murder.
At 2 a.m. I say, Winstead, will your wife be down shortly?
Yes. Laura promised a special seance for Miss Keaton here at 2.
Yes, and I can hardly wait. I've always been so curious about things like this, but I've never attended a seance before.
Well, I assure you, Miss Keaton, you'll find it most fascinating. I've been watching Laura practice for almost 5 years. She makes more progress with every sitting. It's absolutely astounding what she can do. Isn't it, Winstead?
Yes. Quite.
Oh, yes. She really didn't know she had the power, until about 1937. Remember, Winstead, the penthouse party? Who gave the beastly thing? Do you remember?
Yes, I remember very well. It was Quentin Ramsey.
Oh, yes, that's who it was. Ramsey had a mystic oracle board, Ouija. No one could get the thing to work until they coaxed Laura to sit down and have a try.
And she made the board work?
Oh, indeed she did. All over the place. It was absolutely weird. She got messages from several of the guests' friends who had passed on some time ago. People she'd never heard of until that night.
How wonderful.
Well, she used the board for about a year and then found out she could get pencil messages.
Pencil messages?
Yes, she simply substituted the pencil for the little heart-shaped board with the isinglass window. Her messages came in more rapidly that way, were more complete, and this method was less tiring for her.
You mean she actually contacts departed spirits that way?
I mean, she did. But she gave up the writing method 2 years ago. Didn't she, Winstead?
Yes, thank heavens. Every place I'd go, I'd find a paper simply covered with strange scratchings and harebrained so-called messages.
But look here, old fellow. Do I detect a shade of sarcasm in your voice?
I dare say you do. I'm rather bored with the whole thing.
But why, Winstead?
Simply because it's all a lot of...
Well, go on.
Oh, never mind. No, I wish you'd come on downstairs and get this thing over with. Frederica, I urge you not to waste your time with this foolishness.
Foolishness? Now, look here, Winstead. You can't talk about your wife's work like that.
No, darling, really. I'm absolutely fascinated by it all. I can't wait for Mrs. Winstead to come down.
No, she'll be down in a moment. I say, Winstead, really, I can't understand your attitude about Laura's work. Why, you used to enjoy watching her work immensely.
Yes. I used to love her immensely.
What? I say, does that mean that you...
Mr. Rogers, you said a moment ago that Mrs. Winstead doesn't communicate by means of pencil writing any longer.
Why, no, she doesn't. After about a year of it, she undertook a profound and comprehensive study of spiritualism and communication with those who have left this level. In her studies, she learned that those departed ones can sometimes make contact with us through the use of a medium's voice. She began very slowly at first, lying relaxed on a couch, eyes closed, and eventually her contact began to use Laura's own voice for their messages.
And that's what she'll do for us tonight?
That and more.
More?
Oh, yes. You see, Miss Keaton, after Laura Winstead perfected her means of vocal communication with spirits, she continued her studies and experiments until she became able to bring about materialization.
You mean...
I mean, now we see the departed one with whom we commune.
Oh. Well, I really didn't expect that. I thought possibly a few table wrappings.
Oh, there'll be more than mere wrappings here tonight, Miss Keaton. Oh, here's Laura now. Laura, dear.
Good evening. Or should I say good morning? It's after 2 a.m.
Yes, Laura. We've been waiting for you. Really, I think you could be more prompt.
Do you, Harvey? Well, perhaps you should hold the seances instead of me.
Now, Laura, there's really no reason for you to make a scene.
Oh, no, of course not. We're not here for a scene. It's for a seance. Yes. Shall we begin, Laura?
Yes. Harvey, if this is going to bore you, I suggest you go into the library until we've finished.
No, I'll remain here.
Then I must ask you to assume the right attitude. You know we always have difficulty getting good contact whenever a disbeliever is present.
Oh, I'm sure Mr. Winstead believes, don't you, Harvey?
I'd rather ask that same question of you, Frederica. We're finished here.
Oh, don't worry about me, Mrs. Winstead. I'm quite open-minded.
I'm sure you are, dear. Now, if we'll all gather around the table. Rogers, will you turn out the lights, please?
Oh, yes, certainly. There we are. Now we'll all...
Oh, what's that? What's wrong? What's happened?
Oh, never mind, Laura.
Frederica, are you all right?
Oh, yes. Yes, of course she is. I merely missed my chair and bumped into hers. So sorry, Miss Keaton.
Oh, I'm sorry, too. Please forgive me, but I was startled for a moment.
There now. We're all settled. It was entirely my fault, Miss Keaton. I'm terribly sorry.
It's quite all right, Mr. Rogers.
Is everyone quite ready?
Yes, Laura. All ready.
Shall we begin any time now?
Harvey, we will begin when the opportune time arrives. Let me tell you once again that if you are impatient, it will be best that you will leave us.
Oh, no. No, Harvey, please don't go.
Don't worry. I have no intention of leaving.
You please all join hands. Roger, give me your hand. Miss Keaton, yours, please. Now you two clasp hands with Mr. Winstead.
Yes, I understand. Harvey, where's your hand? Oh, there it is.
All set, Laura.
Now, whatever happens, no one is to break the contact. Is that perfectly clear? No one. We will soon make communication with one from another level.
Where will we see the spirit?
I must ask you to be very quiet, Miss Keaton. No one is to speak. And when the materialization takes place, please do not utter a sound unless it addresses you personally. We're gathered here to commune with whomsoever wishes to contact us. We've gathered with open minds and with a unity of purpose. If there is someone who wishes to speak to us, or any one of us, will he or she please make herself known? Is someone seeking contact? Please knock twice for no, thrice for yes. Do you have a message for someone present? For me? No. For someone else who is present here? Do you wish to speak through me? Do you wish to show yourself to us? Ah, very well. We will await your appearance now. When you are ready to speak through me, please begin. Frederica, do you hear me? Yes, I hear you. I am calling to you, Frederica. I hear you. I am over here. Over here. Yes, I see you. Do you recognize me, Frederica? Yes. You are my mother. Yes, dear. I am your mother. Do not worry, Frederica. Do not worry about anything. Be good, my child. Be good and do not worry.
Oh, no. No, don't go. Not yet. I want to talk to you.
She's gone.
Oh, I saw her so plainly. It was my mother. I know it was. Harvey, did you see her?
Yes, I saw her.
Will you turn up the lights, Roger?
Yes, of course. Feeling all right, Laura?
Yes, quite all right, thank you.
Miss Keaton?
Yes, I suppose so. I don't know what to make of this. It's all so wonderful.
I'd take it with a grain of salt, my dear, and try not to think too much about it.
Harvey, I'll not have you say such things. Miss Keaton, you've just seen and talked with your mother. You may do so again whenever you wish. And in case there's the slightest doubt in your mind, I can assure you that it was your mother.
Oh, yes. Yes, I'm sure it was, Mrs. Winstead. And as I say, it's so wonderful. Tell me, why haven't I heard of your ability to do this before now?
Because, Miss Keaton, I permit no one to speak of it. I do not wish to become a public figure. I give sittings for my friends. I don't wish the world at large to know about my power, so I swear every newcomer to complete and absolute secrecy. I'm asking you for your assurance now.
You mean you don't want me to speak of this to anyone?
Yes, that's what I mean. You must promise to speak to no one of what you have seen here tonight.
Very well, Mrs. Winstead. As you wish.
I shall expect you to keep that promise. Now, the seance is ended. I shall bid you all good night.
Now, Laura, dear, won't you stay and talk for a while?
Thank you, no. I'm very tired, and it's almost 3:00.
I'll see you to the stairs then, and then I must be going. Winston, old chap, I'll see you at the office tomorrow.
Very well. Thank you, Rogers.
Good night, Miss Keaton.
Good night, Mr. Rogers. Mrs. Winstead.
Good night, my dear. Please come back again when you can.
Oh, thank you, I will.
Good night, Laura. I'll run Frederica home. I'll be along shortly.
Yes, Harvey. Take your time, my dear. Now, whatever made me say that? I'm sure you will, anyway. Good night.
Harvey, she's suspicious.
That I'm in love with you?
How could she have found out?
I told her.
You did?
Yes. Made a clean breast of it to her. Told her it was no good, she and I trying to continue to make a go of it. It didn't do a bit of good. She refuses to give me a divorce.
Oh.
I'm really desperate, Frederica. I can't stand living with her another day. She's changed so. There's no love in her heart anymore. No warmth. She suddenly becomes such a different person. Nagging, sharp-tongued, overbearing.
Oh, poor dear. You do need someone to look after you. She must neglect you terribly.
She does. I minded a lot at first. Believe me, Frederica, I was always in love with Laura. Now she's so indifferent. Everything I try to do for her.
But why has she become so indifferent to you?
I've stopped trying to explain that months ago. I don't care anymore. Now that I found you.
Harvey.
You do love me, don't you, Frederica?
Oh, yes, dear, of course I do. But we can't go on like this, with no solution in view.
But there must be a solution. There must be some way.
But there is no way. No way except the one Laura denies us.
Just give me a little time, Frederica. It isn't hopeless yet. I promise you, Frederica, I'll find a way. I'll find a way somehow.
My darling. Harvey, I'm still thinking about what Laura did here tonight. The apparition, the voice of my mother.
Oh, nonsense, Frederica.
Darling, what do you mean?
Here, I'll show you what I mean. Here, I want you to see this, Frederica. Here you are. See?
Why, that's almost an exact image of my mother.
Nothing but a papier-mâché face, painted to resemble an old lady, an old gray shawl and some old-style spectacles.
But how does it work? How did she make it appear?
Easily. Look, up above there. An almost invisible wire strung across the room. Laura simply releases an electrically controlled lock on this cabinet behind her chair. Since the invisible wire is placed at a single angle, the so-called spirit slips slowly out in front of those sitting at the table. Here, like this. There. Then Laura says whatever she wants to. Changing her voice. When it's all over, she simply manipulates this cord on a pulley inside the cabinet. The image is returned to the cabinet. Simple.
Oh, well, then she merely tricked us.
Tricked you. I've known for years that Laura's nothing but a fraud.
You might have kept what you know to yourself, Harvey.
Oh, Mrs. Winstead.
Laura, I asked her not to come here. She insisted that since you extended the invitation, she was obliged to. I felt it only fair to show her that she'd been the victim of a hoax.
Oh, Harvey, never mind, Miss Keaton. I'm not in the least embarrassed. The apparition was a trick, yes. But I assure you, my dear, the voice was not.
Oh, of course it was, Laura. You know it.
Indeed. Harvey, my dear, there are many things between earth and heaven that none of us know. There are many things that you don't know. Yes, I have used tricks at our meetings. I admit that. But not everything that has happened here has been trickery.
You'll have to convince me, Laura.
Harvey, I have a feeling that someday, somehow I will convince you. And that when I do, you'll never be able to scoff at me again.
Laura, I'm sorry about last night. But we simply must settle this thing once and for all.
I can't see that there's anything to settle.
You haven't the right to hold me like this, Laura. You don't love me. Why don't you give me my freedom?
Simple, Harvey. Because no woman likes to see another take her place. And besides, it's so convenient being married to your income.
You're the most selfish, the most self-centered woman I've ever met.
Am I, darling?
You certainly are. Laura, all I ask is a divorce. I'll see to it that you're well cared for financially.
No, Harvey. You're wasting your breath. I told you no yesterday. I say no again today. And I'll keep on saying no as long as I live.
As long as you live. Yes. Just so, my dear. Just so.
Frederica? Frederica, darling.
Yes? Oh, Laura. How are you?
Excellent, Frederica. I'm driving out to Cliff Point. Won't you ride along with me? We'll be back by noon.
Oh, why, thank you so much. I would like the fresh air.
Then come along, Frederica. I need some company, and besides, I want to have a little talk with you.
Frederica! Laura! Laura, stop! Stop the car, for heaven's sakes! Laura! Good heavens, Frederica! She'll be killed!
Here's your evening paper. Harvey Winstead's wife dead and plunged over Cliff Point. 2 women forced off highway by unidentified truck driver. Mrs. Harvey Winstead killed instantly. Miss Frederica Keaton expected to die. Here you are, folks. Get your evening paper.
How is she, Doctor? How is Miss Keaton?
She's slightly improved, Mr. Winston.
Thank heaven.
But she's still in a very serious condition. She regained consciousness early this morning after a 10 days coma. She seems to recognize people, but something is wrong with Miss Keaton's nerve centers. For one thing, she can't use her voice.
An operation, perhaps?
Yes, a very serious one. To require, well, quite an expense.
Oh, hang the expense. Get the best surgeon you know of. I'll pay all the bills, everything. Only Frederica Keaton must recover. I say, Winstead, do you really think that this girl will ever recover? I don't know. It's been months since the accident. She hasn't been able to speak one word to me.
Oh, look here, it's none of my affair, really, but I know things have been going very badly for you lately. Losing your wife and all. If you need some money, old man.
Oh, no. No, thanks. Thanks a lot, Rogers. My money's not completely gone yet.
Good news. Good news, Winston.
Yes, Doctor?
The operation was a success. Believe me, I never dreamed it would require 3 operations to make Miss Keaton able to speak again.
She can talk?
Yes, after almost 6 months of silence.
Oh, that's splendid. When can I see her, Doctor?
Why, now, if you wish. Here, this way. Just a few minutes now. She's very weak.
Yes. Hello, Frederica.
Harvey, darling.
Oh, my darling, at last.
Isn't it wonderful, dear?
Oh, my dearest one, to hear your voice again.
I thought I'd never speak to you again.
You must forget all that, darling. Get well soon, please. Because just as soon as you're strong enough, we'll be married, dearest. Just as I've always told you we'd be. No, wait a minute, Frederica. I want to carry my bride over the threshold.
Oh, sweetheart.
Up you come now. Yeah, there we are. Now. There you are, Mrs. Winstead, in your new home at last. Now, how about a kiss from Mr. Winstead's new bride?
Harvey, you're always the fool, aren't you?
Frederica, darling.
Oh, stop it. Stop it. You're so annoying, Harvey.
Frederica, whatever's come over you?
You thought your problem was solved, didn't you? You thought sending me over the embankment to my death was the solution.
I don't understand.
Look at me. Whom do you see? Frederica Keaton, yes, of course you do. But whose voice do you hear?
Laura.
You've been so stupid, Harvey, you hadn't even noticed.
It can't be.
Are you a believer now?
Laura, my wife.
Dark fantasy.
You have heard A Delicate Case of Murder, the 14th original tale of dark fantasy by Scott Bishop. Georgiana Cook was heard tonight as Laura Winstead. Ben Morris was Harvey Winstead. Eleanor Naylor Corrin played Frederica Keaton. Muir Height was Rogers. And Fred Wayne was the Doctor. Tom Paxton speaking. Dark Fantasy comes to you from WKY, Oklahoma City. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
From baffling disappearances to shadowy seances, this episode of classic radio drama theater has certainly kept us on the edge of our seats. We hope you've been enthralled by these tales of mystery and the unexpected. Which story left you the most intrigued? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to catch every thrilling new episode. Until next time, remember, the best mysteries are the ones that linger long after the story ends.